This video shows how to make a saddle leather scabbard with an earth magnet latch for a 3-inch peeling knife, and includes instruction on how to thread a needle, saddle stitch multiple layers of leather, carve and stamp to decorate the surface of the leather, hand dye more than one color, create cutout templates and glue up jigs with a laser printer, and how to bevel, burnish, and protect the edges and surfaces with durable finishes as part of your leathercraft project design. A small leather edge guard for a kitchen knife is a great way to use up small pieces of scrap leather. Small earth magnets sewn to the outside of the edge guard act as a latch holding the knife in place, and a flat gusset protects the stitches as the knife is taken in and out of the leather edge guard. Like almost all leathercraft designs, you can start by accurately drawing the knife and the edge guard design templates in 1:1 scale using a drawing program, and print the marking, cutting, and glue up jigs at the same time using 1/8" clear acrylic. High quality vegetable tanned leather is expensive, so you do not want it to go to waste, so using an accurate template or pattern will limit the risk of cutting out the wrong shape. The acrylic will most likely have a plastic coating on the outside that can be removed. I like to see the leather I am cutting out, so I use clear acrylic to help avoid using blemished leather, but the plastic can also be left on to protect the surface of the acrylic pattern too. Vegetable tanned leather is very unforgiving, so make sure the template does not have sharp edges that will mark and scratch the surface, so make a quick pass with fine grit sandpaper along the edges. Fasten a piece of 3 to 4 ounce vegetable tanned leather and template to a cutting surface on the end of a table using spring clamps. You do not want the template to move, but you do not want to use the template to make an impression into the leather either. Use a sharp knife to cut around the template, or a hobby knife with a sharp disposable blade. The same pattern shape is used for the back and the front, so make sure you flip the template and use the reverse shape so the pieces match up when you're finished cutting them out. A gusset means side in leathercraft, so a flat piece of leather with the center cut out for the knife to fit into is a gusset that is used to help avoid cutting out the stitches as you move the blade in and out of the edge guard. Use dividers to measure and mark an accurate line 5/16 of an inch away from the edge, so the stitching line will be half the distance when you stitch the edge guard together. Use a ruler to adjust the distance between the two ends to 8 millimeters or 5/16 of an inch, and make sure the divider's adjustment screw is tight so the distance does not change. Make the gusset the exact same size as the top and bottom, and trim the end of the gusset to fit after the top and bottom are fitted. An arch punch is the easiest way to cut out a 1-inch circle, but you can also carefully cut around a 1-inch acrylic circle template too. The 1-inch leather circle is stitched around a 1/2-inch earth magnet to create a natural latch. Earth magnets are not very expensive and are easy to find online. There are lots of different ways to decorate leather, and leather carving is the process of adding a 3-dimensional appearance to leather by cutting and stamping the surface. The saddle leather needs to be hydrated before it can be carved and stamped, but not soaking, so wet down the surface of the leather with fresh distilled water and let the water begin to dry out of the leather before using. This process is called casing. Acrylic templates work great as marking gauges. Use a scratch awl to mark the cutting line by tracing around the edges of the template. A swivel knife is held upright and mounted on a pivot for a finger to rest on to apply pressure to the depth of the cut. The barrel of the knife is encased in ball bearings, allowing the blade to move freely in all directions. The blade I use is angled and needs to be very sharp with a polished finish to make it easier to drag through the leather. Use a leather strop loaded with polishing compound to polish the edge. Use the swivel knife to outline and cut a design into the surface of the leather as an initial stage to tooling the leather with decorations. I chose a panel design with a beveled border. You want to slowly drag the knife in a fluid motion to get a smooth cut. It is important to make sure the cuts you make are the same depth, and you want to make the cut in one pass. The moisture in the leather causes the knife to stick, so use constant pressure when you're dragging the knife to make the cut. Just after the leather is soaked, the leather is soft and easy to shape, and is the darkest color. As the leather dries, the color lightens and the texture becomes more malleable without tearing or drastically changing the overall shape of the original cutout. Hold the end of the stamp over the surface of the leather at a perpendicular 90-degree angle and gently and evenly tap the top of the stamp with a mallet as you guide the tool along the cut made with your swivel knife. Use a spoon modeling tool to even and smooth out the surface of the leather left by the stamped bevel marks. Scribe a stitching line 3 mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge using dividers. A good set of stitching chisels are a great investment for a leather crafter that likes to sew by hand. They are used to punch small diamond-shaped holes for the needle and thread to pass through. Each point of the chisel is spaced precisely along a straight line, so the 2-point chisel is the only chisel that will work around a curved stitching line. The points on this crimson hide chisel are 5 mm apart or spaced at 5 stitches per inch. A small piece of scrap leather makes an easy punch pad that will protect the tips of your chisels if you are using a hard punching surface. You do not want to make the hole too big, so gently tap the top of the chisel with the mallet to make the stitching hole. Make sure you keep the chisel at the same perpendicular 90-degree angle, or the needle might be difficult to pull through later on when you are sewing more than one piece of leather together. The last hole is used to anchor the chisel with one prong, and the other prong creates a second hole spaced at the same distance. Only stitch mark the one side and mark where the edge of the gusset needs to be so it can be trimmed and securely glued and stitched into place. There are lots of different types and colors of leather dyes to use. EcoFlow is a product line made by Phoebeans and sold by Tandy Leather Supply. You can use more than one color of leather dye, but they should be of the same type of dye. Do not mix oil dyes with water dyes, for example, or mix different dyes made by different manufacturers without testing the dyes together on a piece of scrap leather first to see if you like the result. I use water solvent dyes that are a little easier on the environment but stain easily, of course, so rubber gloves and a disposable cardboard work surface are a good idea. The colors used here are charcoal black and range tan, which is a brown saddle leather color. A small sponge on the end of a stick used to clean electronics equipment works great, but a small brush works too. Apply an even layer and allow the dye to soak in before adding the next layer of color or dye. As the dye soaks into the leather, it spreads, so when you are using more than one color of dye, approach the separation line carefully to avoid the colors mixing where they're not supposed to. A small finishing brush works better for the corners and edges. An edge beveler takes the top outer edge off the leather, leaving a rounded surface. Edge bevelers come in lots of different sizes. This one is for thin leather. To use it, make sure it is sharp and gently guide the tool along the edge. Apply second coat of dye including the edges. Let the dye absorb into the leather evenly and let it to dry. When hand dyeing leather, it is easy to add more than enough dye, so adding the dye in layers will help avoid unsightly stains. Also, adding more dye allows you to highlight areas too. Stitching several layers of leather together can become bulky and difficult to stitch properly, so shaving the thin layer off the edges makes it a little easier. Use a skiving knife to remove a 10 mm strip of leather without disturbing the natural edge. This will improve the edge guard's look and function with a sunken seam when stitched. Gum tragacanth is a plant-based gum that is used to help slick the edge surface during burnishing and is easy to apply to the edges of the leather with a small sponge. A slicker is a tool used to burnish the leather edge, and they come with different sized grooves. The surface of the leather edge needs to be smooth so the edge finishing paint will be easy to apply and dry smooth too. Burnishing and painting the edges are important steps to ensure the layers of fibers in the leather will not fray as easily. Edge paint is a liquid-based coating designed to soak into the raw leather and creates a flexible coating to make the leather edges a little more durable. A leather edge paint roller is an applicator and finishing tool designed to make the process a little easier. I like to use the most eco-friendly products I can find, but I still apply the glue in a well-ventilated room and wear a mask. Use a small piece of sandpaper or a leather rougher on the surface of the smooth leather to create a stronger bond. Carefully apply the glue with a small applicator. You do not want the glue to spill out underneath, creating a messy seam or unsightly glue stain, so leave a little room for the glue to spread out and remove excess glue with a paper towel if necessary. Sandwich the magnet between the leather and use an acrylic circle 1/8 of an inch larger than the magnet to allow the edges to bend around the magnet to achieve a stronger bond. Use the exact same stitching chisel you used for the top and punch the bottom layer through using the top stitch mark layer as a guide. I use John James size number 4 harness needles when I use 0.6 millimeter thread. Bonded nylon thread is strong and easy to saddle stitch leather with because the fibers are tight and more resistant to a needle snagging it. Ritza Tiger thread is a popular brand and the color used here is beige. Threading a needle can be difficult, but with a clean flat end and a little patience it gets easy after you do it a few times. After the needle is threaded, pass the needle through the end of the thread twice and pull the end of the thread tight so the needle does not come off. A stitching pony is a type of clamp used to hold the leather in place as you stitch, so it is like an extra set of hands. Needles can easily go missing, so an earth magnet pin cushion is a good idea. Going one stitch backwards and then going back through the same hole you started from is called a back stitch, and it doubles the stitch, locking it in place while you finish stitching the row. The saddle stitch is my favorite stitch because it is very useful. A saddle stitch is created when the two ends of one thread are passed through the holes from opposite directions to create a row of interlocking stitches on both sides. Finish the row of stitching with a back stitch and tie the ends off with a square knot. Small pliers are handy to help grab the needle and pull the needle through the hole, especially when the needle and thread are pulled through the same hole several times. The remaining thread needs to be cut off with a pair of scissors or burnt off with a lighter or a thread zapper. A leather edge clamp is used to crimp the finish line of stitches so the stitches become embedded into the seam. Leathercraft is easier if you assemble and sew each layer separately. Tan coat is a leather finishing resin made by Phoebeans, and this will help protect the inside of the edge guard from moisture. Leave the areas dry where the gusset will go for better adhesion later when you glue the pieces together. After the tan coat has a chance to dry, you can slick the back with a glass burnisher to tighten the leather fibers. Apply glue on both sides of the gusset to get a good bond and line up the ends as you sandwich the layers together. The acrylic pattern pieces work perfectly as a glue-up jig. Shop-made jigs are very useful and make this project easy to reproduce. Small plastic spring clamps add plenty of pressure, and the acrylic helps to protect the surface of the leather from getting marked up by the clamps as the glue sets. Clamping the leather in place while the glue sets creates a stronger bond. A triple back stitch is completed the same way as a single back stitch, just in triplicate, so you will finish and tie off the thread on the fourth hole back. In case anybody is wondering, I use Blanchard diamond-shaped awls and round the end to a razor-sharp spear tip instead of a needle shape. A back stitch locks the thread in place, and a triple back stitch adds a little more strength, especially when the stitches are at an opening or when stitches are holding together areas of higher wear. So a triple back stitch is a practical application for this edge guard. When you back stitch, the stitching hole becomes tight because of the extra thread, and it also makes it easy to snag the thread on the way through. If this happens, you have to cut the snag out before continuing. An awl is a good tool to use when back stitching to open up the hole a little bit. A good habit to get into is when you put the needle in the hole, pull the thread in both directions to discover a snag before you pull the needle through the snag thread and have to cut it out. Finish off your stitching and tie and burn off the ends of thread. Vegetable tan leather can be sanded smooth. Nail files and small sanding sticks are good tools to remove the remaining bits of excess leather and bits of glue that was squeezed out during glue up. Burnish and edge paint the edges and let dry on small pieces of acrylic so the edge paint does not dry onto your work surface. This is a small hammer with a smooth rounded surface on its face and is used to gently tap the row of stitches to embed them into the leather. Natural leather can become dry and brittle, so it needs to be protected with a little wax and oil. The oil soaks into the leather, making it soft and supple, and after the excess is removed, a thin layer of wax remains on the surface to help protect it.